Okay, y'all, so I know it's starting to warm up outside, but Ashton and me have been feeling a little under the weather this week. So we decided to make broccoli cheese soup and chicken noodle soup this week, but I am going to show you how I make the broccoli cheddar soup. So these are all the ingredients that you are going to need, but I did leave out the carrots that I put in there as well. So I've already began sauteing my garlic and my onion. So that's what I'm doing right here now. And then I'm going to take some Better Than Bouillon chicken base, because did y'all see that 1 can of chicken broth that I had? That's all I had in the house was that 1 can of chicken broth. So since I don't have a lot of chicken broth, we're going to make our own broth, or help build the broth by adding this Better Than Bouillon soup. And y'all going to see how we're going to do that later. Okay, so I added 2 little plastic spoonfuls, which this should be a teaspoon full, and then I began stirring that around in the pot to let those onions and the garlic soak up that Better Than Bouillon seasoning. Now remember, if you've cooked with Better Than Bouillon before, you know it is a concentrated version. So in order to get the broth effect, you are going to want to dilute it with water. Typically what I do is I dilute it with chicken broth, but it was a good thing that I only had 1 can of chicken broth, because I used this Campbell's. So I poured the Campbell's in there, and then I poured 4 canfuls of water in there to finish diluting it. Okay, so after I did that, I went ahead and stirred it, and now you can see our broth has formed. Okay, because that 1 can of chicken broth just wasn't going to cut it at all, baby. So we had to make our own. So you're going to let that stir, let that simmer for a little bit. So in another pot, I separated some more onions and garlic and sauteed those. And now I'm making my cream base. So I'm adding some garlic powder right now. And then I'm going to add my onion powder to that garlic powder that we just added. Come on, girl, add that seasoning. And then I'm going to add some black pepper, because, you know, I like to season with black pepper as well. Yeah, so then we're just going to give that a quick little stir around. Make sure not to splash any of your contents on the stove, because you're going to be looking like a fool if you ain't got nothing in the pot. So yeah, we're going to let that simmer, let that come to a boil, because that's our cream base, so we want it to thicken. So what I did right here was add a block of cream cheese, which is going to help that roux thicken more, believe it or not, but it's going to also give it a creamy texture, a creamy consistency. Well, an even more creamy texture and consistency. And you know what? We keto. This is keto broccoli and cheddar soup. So we adding all that fat to the pot. So typically I saute my broccoli and my carrots in the pot with the onions and garlic, but we're going to add it to the soup base, and we're going to let that boil so we can soak up that chicken flavored. Now we're going to add the carrots as well, and we're going to give that a little old stir. So we can go ahead and let that simmer and let that boil so it can soak up all that goodness of that chicken broth flavor. You see those little onions and carrots floating around that pot? Okay. So, y'all, my camera cut out. I hate vlogging on my phone, but I love it at the same time. So I had already poured almost all the cream roux in there, but I tried to give y'all a little glimpse. So I poured the rest, the corner in there, you know, for aesthetic purposes. But that was a poor ass aesthetic. My bad. So, yeah, we're going to stir that around. Now, the broth is going to thin out that roux. But don't worry about that. We got something for that, okay? So, we're going to add our cheese. And you do this to taste. I do not use pre-shredded cheese. I use cheese that I shredded myself. A block of shredded cheese, a block of cheddar cheese that I shredded up myself. So now we're going to add the remainder of that cheese. And you can thicken with the cheese, but I chose to use xanthan gum. And I use less than half a tablespoon of xanthan gum. So more like a teaspoon of xanthan gum. And yeah, stir that up, and that's it.